Welcome to the I Love Coaching podcast, the show where we help coaches, entrepreneurs, and leaders build businesses that create massive impact. I'm Adam Roach, alongside my incredible co-host,
Jess Weber, and we're here today to bring you the best strategies, mindset shifts, and real-life success stories to help you level up in your coaching journey.
Whether you're launching your coaching business, scaling to 6 or 7 figures, or just looking for inspiration to push through, this podcast is your go-to resource.
We're bringing you expert insights, real talk, and actionable items every single episode. So if you're ready to take your coaching game to the next level,
then let's dive on in. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the I Love Coaching podcast. I am your host, Adam Roach, along with my co-host,
Jess Weber. How are you?
I'm great. I'm fantastic. It's spring is sprung here in Charleston. Everything's blooming again. There's yellow pollen all over my beautiful white truck. Life is, I don't even have allergies, but I feel like I have allergies when I walk outside here.
What's funny is I just saw a meme online the other day of a person bundled up like they were going to go out with their snowblower, but somebody had changed the video and it was now blowing yellow pollen instead of snow. So instead of a snowblower pushing white snow, it was snow blowing yellow pollen. And I was like, that is the most apt description, meme, whatever, of living in the South that I've ever seen. Like,
that is
so much pollen.
That is definitely, it's interesting too. And total side note to yard work, I have yesterday, Addison and I, we worked really hard in our front yard. We I don't even know what it's called, like a garden weasel. It's got these little spikes on it, right? And I put it all through all of our front yard, right? We were just going to overseed here in the early spring. And I put all this topsoil down with fertilizer and overseeded it. And then on the right side of our yard, I call it my shade garden. We did the same thing. And then, of course, my lovely wife decides that she wants to redo all the bathrooms in the house. So she hires this crew. Crew comes over with their big trailer, parks it in my on the side, right in my grass. And I'm thinking, well, they're just seedlings right now. Hopefully they will survive tire tracks. So we will see what happens after this is finished.
All that aeration effort and everything. Oh, that's rough.
It's okay. Listen, it's just grass. It'll grow hopefully again. But hey, let's dive into something today, because we've heard this now quite a few times in our community. I've experienced it myself. And I know your big brain, your high level IQ, you can help me solve this. Though I have this feeling, I love to read. I love to read. I love to learn. I love to go to events. I feel like, though, the more I read, the more I learn, I'm actually getting dumber, Jess. It feels like I'm at this overwhelm of just feed me. And then it's like, oh my gosh, where do I even start and where do I begin? Knowing in your process-oriented world, let's talk about this for our listeners today, that those people that like to educate themselves, those people that like to learn, those people that like to read, or maybe just casually learn and read, how to go execute and implement. Let's talk about that.
Well, I love that you're bringing this up because, literally this morning I was reading Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek, just because, and it's classic. Funny because, we've talked about on this podcast before that I read very quickly, but I do read with intention. And so one thing that this book has really caused me to do is to pause and only read a chapter or a section at a time until I can truly process it and internalize and kind of personalize it. And so one of the quotes from this morning that's right in alignment with this conversation that is like sitting with me right now is a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention. And love that language. The wealth of information creates poverty of attention.
So
it is so good because it's true. We live in this information age, right? And we live in this world of instant gratification and the ability to store almost infinite amount of data. Literally, if you're saving emails to read later, you can keep going, buy more storage for your email inbox, right? You can copy every single spreadsheet that's shared on every single Zoom call you're on into your Google Drive and save it for later. And so we have this habit of collecting things because we don't want to pay for it, right? And we want to have it at our beck and call whenever we want it. And yet that abundance of information creates a lack of clarity, right? It creates a lack of intentional focus and execution. because there's always something new to consume. There's always something new to read, to listen to watch, to implement, to do. And so I love books like 4-Hour Workweek or, Atomic Habits and things like that, where all of those conversations, or Cal Newport, Slow Productivity is another great one. All of these books talk about stop consuming, slow your roll, literally, and be more intentional. And so I think, you said tactical, process oriented. I think you have to be very intentional with your learning and look at what you're consuming and say, hey, is what I am currently learning actually moving the needle forward on my goals and towards achieving my vision? So you have to do an audit, right, of your learning consumption first. And if it's not something that is moving the needle forward, then you need to not consume it in that moment.
Yeah, that's really great advice, because here's what I'll just continue with my world. Right. Well, Dana and I will go to Maxwell events. We'll go to educational type events, and the world as we know it now, everyone writes a book. Everyone writes a book. Right. And so everyone not only writes a book, everyone pushes their book. And so when you connect with someone that is speaking up on stage, or their message resonates with you, and guess what? They have a book. You buy a book. If you were to come to our house, Dana and I's house, more so her than me now, because it overwhelms me, I would bet a lot of money, and I don't know this number off the top of my head, but it's going to be pretty close to accurate. Her side of the bed, her nightstand, has probably at least 24 books. Mine has 7 because I counted it last night, because it overwhelmed me. I was like, oh my gosh, these are the books that I want to read, but I keep stacking on top of them, right? It's like, oh my gosh, that was great content. Let me buy your book. That was great content. Let me buy your book. And I'm going to challenge the language that we hear so frequently now. I don't think, well, let me rephrase that. We are still always going to be in an information age. Information is always readily available to us now, more readily available than it has probably ever been in the world of information with all the AI stuff, right?
Yeah.
Jess, I think we are in probably an execution age, but based on what we talked about just now at the top of this podcast, we're in a lack of execution age because so many people are lacking in the execution space. What would you say?
Agree. To me, it's actually, we haven't transitioned from learning how to use that information, right, that we have to implement. And that's the bottleneck, is literally we have so much information. We quit learning how to think. Like you said, to me earlier today, that you feel like, generically speaking, people have gotten dumber, despite the fact that information is more readily available, data is more readily available. And I said 100%, because people spend so much time collecting knowledge because they believe that that's going to make them informationally wealthy, but that they don't utilize it and grow and let the interest on it compound just the way they should with information, the way they do with money. Instead, they're like, I'm just going to hoard it. And my nerd side, my brain is going dragon hoarding. We collect it all. We don't share it. We just keep it for ourselves. And maybe we'll sit there and look at it. And oh my goodness, I'll count my books and I'll color code them and, all the things. But we don't actually do anything with it. And that's where my statement of being intentional with what you're learning leads to then creating an action plan and actually executing. So for me, it's kind of a 3-step thing. Be intentional with your learning and then process the information that is appropriate for you in the moment to achieve your goals or move your vision forward. So learn, then process, and that way you can actually execute on it. Because too often, we have people who are going to collect the knowledge, but that's the end of it. They don't process it, they don't use it, and they don't execute on it.
So I want to go back. I was typing as you were talking there, because that was a good point. The intentionality with learning. If, from my perspective and opinion, if you're learning for learning's sake, we've heard this in the Keller Williams world. If you're learning for learning's sake, you're not doing anything with it. But if you're learning for doing sake, then you're doing something with it. And I think at the end of the day, what we as growth-oriented humans should be doing is, in the beginning of the year, or at the end of a year, you've set goals, you've set rewards, and you can see the gap between where you are and where you want to grow to. I love this. Intentional with learning. The gap then can be closed, not necessarily through time, though, through a growth plan. We've heard about growth plans before. So in a growth plan, you can go ahead and write out what specifically do you need to learn, intentional with learning, what specifically do you need to learn so that you can close that gap between where you are and where you want to grow to and achieve that goal much faster. And that way it is intentional learning. Going back to, again, just speaking from my own standpoint, when I go to these events and I think the speaker is really smart, they're really intentional, they're very cool, they're whatever adjective I want to describe them with, I buy their book and it goes on my nightstand. And that is not intentional learning. That is, you just sold me your book. Congratulations.
It is. Well, the thing is I don't have a problem with you buying books. Like, I switched from paperbacks and hardbacks to Kindle because I had too many things I wanted to read and I didn't have the storage for it. And so I have, Adam, I think 500 books right now that I have not read on my Kindle. And about 350 of those are fiction because I read fiction every night. And then probably, like I said, 150 or so are nonfiction, business, self-help, growth, mindset type books, because I read those every morning when I wake up, but I read them in a much smaller dose. And I don't read them. So this is where that intentional learning comes in. I do not read them just because I saw that person, heard that person, whatever, but it doesn't mean I haven't saved it to read it later. I am super intentional with what book I pick next for my morning consumption. And that is based on what you said, that gap analysis of where I am versus where I want to be. And it makes me actually go back to our conversation on a cash talk: knowledge, attitude, skills, and habits. That is all intentionality as well in defining that gap and choosing what is right to close the gap. And so I like the fact that you bought those books. To me, there's nothing wrong with having those books. It's not even there's anything wrong with having them on the shelf. But the thing is, it shouldn't be read in order of purchase. It shouldn't be read in order of event. It should be read in order of what is the next right thing I need to read to close the gap.
Though, again, I will speak from that perspective that if I buy the book, I want to read it because that topic is either has interested me at that moment in time or it is still fresh on the brain. Because if I don't read it right then and there, I won't ever read it. Right? It piqued my interest at that point in time, which is why I bought the book. And if I don't read it, well, then it goes on my shelf. And I hate putting any book on my shelf that I haven't read because I feel like an imposter. It's like, oh, look at all my books. Oh my gosh, I haven't read 90% of them, right? So as I'm listening to you, I think everybody can be a little bit different here. I have to be intentional with what I want to put into my brain because I will squirrel, I will get distracted, and I can't be as intentional as you because you're good at compartmentalizing type things where if you've got a stack of 200 books over here that these are what you personally want to read, but over here, this is your stack of other 200 books that you're going to read to implement. I think that's a good distinguishing part is this is for fun and entertainment, but it's still learning. And this is for purely implementation.
Well, the thing is that I would challenge you probably is if you're at the event and you can't get something special from purchasing the book at that moment, the reason I have hardbacks is because my intentionality here is 1, I've read it, and 2, I've met the person, and 3, I've got it signed by them. Sure. And I try really hard not to buy something unless I have a massive impact from it and I've been able to communicate that to the author directly. But what I would do is if you go to an event like that, instead of purchasing the book directly, I would put it in I keep lists in my Amazon cart, right? So I literally have a book list of fiction books and a book list of nonfiction books. So instead of impulsively buying at the event, I would keep it in that list to reference later. And if I've gone through everything on my shelves and I've gone through everything in my Kindle and none of those fit what I'm trying to learn, but that book does in that moment, then I would give it the justification to purchase in that moment versus purchasing as a reaction to the event. Because again, I mean, ADHD, dopamine, man, I could buy 10 books a day and it still wouldn't be enough just because I can read. But I have to be very, very intentional because otherwise I'm going to drag and hoard books. And it's I need to know that this is the next thing.
I don't know what drag and hoard books means. I don't know. That's another one of those fancy things that you come to my podcast, our podcast with. I forget what the one was five episodes ago.
Drag and hoard.
Yeah, trebuchet. I'm never going to remember that word. Dragon hoard. Tell us what that means.
Dragon hoarding, dragons by nature in the fantasy world, they collect riches, gold, wealth, and they keep it in their den and they don't do anything with it. They just collect it. And they're very possessive of it. So it's not a sharing, it's not a giving, it's a, my precious type situation and I want all of it. And that's what I feel like people do with knowledge is like, they're like, I need all of this in my world because it's going to make me more intellectually wealthy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, let's go back to dragons real quick. So, Coach Allen has labeled, you got to slay the dragon. So every time you're talking about a dragon, it's like, I'm trying to kill these dragons, right? And so, but you're bringing dragons into hoard all my books.
I'd rather ride a dragon and have a dragon as like a companion pet than kill one.
I'm killing all the dragons. So now let's go to execution now. Okay, so we've gotten intentional with our learning. Okay, so that means we've read the book, we've gone to the class, we've gone to specific AI bot to help us with the learning process of said whatever it is. Now let's go to the execution part. So I know you coach really high level people, really high level integrators, really high level leaders that maybe have challenges in the execution space. And I know how good you are at laying stuff out, and you know that I need to see it on a flow chart and I need to see the step 1, step 2, step 3. What would you say to someone that says, okay, fine, I'm really good with intentional learning, though my execution isn't the greatest?
Well, I would challenge what they're currently doing in their calendar very first before they're allowed to execute anything new. Because here's the thing that I've learned about working with almost every entrepreneur I've ever worked with is they fill up their calendar with things that they find interesting or they think are important. And often they're not, or they're doing something in a very inefficient way. And so to me, they haven't earned the right to go execute on something new yet. And so for me, process and execution, you have to find the space to do something new and execute something new by letting go of something old or becoming more efficient at something and becoming more effective in what you're doing with your time. So, we've got phrases that we've learned through books and through different relationships with people of, work will fill to the time allowed, right? If you want to go implement something new or execute on it, well, you've got to have space in your time to do that. But most of our entrepreneurial friends, my clients, that kind of thing, they already feel tapped out and maxed out. And they think that execution on the new thing is going to buy them back time. When really, in all honesty, they probably need to do a time audit first to earn the right to go execute something new, which is another reason dragon hoarding knowledge is so silly to me, because I'm like, you can't go do new things because you haven't earned the right to have the space and the time to do the new thing. And so, literally, Adam, every person that I work with, my first few calls with them is literally looking at everything they're doing in their world and saying, show me your calendar, show me where you spend your time, and show me your priorities, show me your tasks. And I audit everything, starting with the calendar and the task list, because 9 times out of 10, I can buy them the space they need just by a few little tweaks in that calendar. And so I'm literally in the process, this, of building a course to teach people how I do this the most effective way. Because when I've taught this class live, every attendee has come in and said, my God, you've changed my life. And all I had to do was spend an hour playing with my calendar. Oh, and it's like, yes, you spend a little bit of time here to earn the right to do so many more things. So I would say earn the right to execute by auditing your time.
Okay, so let's keep going. So they audit their time, they've earned the right, and now they have to implement something new, right? We're closing the gap here on their growth process, right? We're closing the gap from starting point to goal. And the only way to get to the goal is to learn something new, execute or implement and execute on that, right?
Yeah.
So it's something new, right? It is something new, which the brain doesn't want you to do, by the way. We all know that, right? The brain has 2 jobs. The first part of the job of the brain is to keep you alive. The second part of the job of the brain is to conserve energy. Jess, when we're learning something new, when we're executing in this space now of something that we have learned, we may have a subconscious that comes in and kicks in and says, that's new. I don't like that. Let's don't do that. You remember, you used to do it this way. Let's go back to the old where me, brain, 3,000-year-old organ, says, let's keep you alive because that takes up too much energy. What would you say to someone in the execution space that maybe starts something but doesn't finish?
Good question. I would say consistency compounds. So I would challenge anybody who's executing something new to look at what they want to execute and create a very simple action plan from it. A leads to B leads to C, and you execute consistently on A to earn the right to then execute consistently on B to C. Because too often, again, shiny object squirrel syndrome, we're like, oh my God, we earn the right. We get to do the thing. I'm going to go do all A, B, and C because it's going to move me towards my goal that much faster. But then they go too hard at A, forget B, half-ass C, and then nothing happens. And then they're frustrated. And then they're like, well, that was dumb. Now I just wasted all that time and energy and I didn't get the result I wanted. And honestly, they probably would have if they had slowed down just long enough to create a very simple step-by-step plan. And I know that's not the way that most entrepreneurs think, which is why it's so important to have a coach or an operations person or an integrator, whatever language you need there, but somebody who is a sounding board for your drive to execute. Because so often the reason people stall is because they're trying to skip the process and they don't want to do a process. They just want to go from A to C.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up because, again, we've talked about that before in the past with the pain line. And you know you're at a pain line when you do one of three things. You stall, you sabotage, or you sell. Sell meaning you punt it or kick it down the road, right? Mm-hmm. And so from this vantage point is I love that step-by-step process. Now let's go to implementation, right? So we're executing on this. Now we need to implement what it is that we know we needed to learn. We've learned it. Now we've started to execute on it. And now it is laying it on top of our business of implementation, right? And what I mean by that we can even take the blueprint, right? The blueprint in our second step talks about putting them on a 14-day mental diet, right? Yeah. Where they are learning a new flow process. Now that's the execution of it is doing it. And now we need to go implement it after the fact that we have learned it. So let's talk about implementation now.
Mm-hmm. Well, to me, that goes back full circle to the beginning, the calendar and the time and the consistency with the time. So, once you've executed on it and you've figured out that simple process, it's about consistently time blocking and consistently visiting the thing and building a system around it, which I know sounds like a dirty word for so many people, but systems allow us to do the thing repeatedly and get the outcome that we're seeking rather than just winging it. Right. And it buys us back a ton of time and brain space because if we have it systematized, we already know the process and we don't have to think about it again.
Yourself time, energy, and money, right? All day long. Save yourself time, energy. Now, I want to give a real world example, and this isn't a business example. This is from my son playing tennis. So learning. That's when he's on the court at practice in his private lessons. Executing is, I would take the execution of learning something new is also in practice, but also in matches. Mm-hmm. And then the implementation is at that moment in time, whether it is on a certain point or a certain play that he has to run, it happens, right? There's a system there because of the situation in the match. And I'll give you an example. So Addison he's almost 6'2". Gosh, he's almost taller than I am, and he's 16 years old, and he's a stud on the tennis court. And we were playing in a tennis tournament not too long ago. He was in a third set tiebreak. Now it was 9 serving 8, and you go to 10, which means he was on the ad side of the court. Which means if you're looking at the tennis courts, it's the right side. He's serving to the right side of the court, and he has a play that he runs. So he learned this, he executed in practice, and now he had to go implement it into the match. Now, this situation had shown itself many, many times before during the same match, and he did not implement it at the right time. Listen, I know what he's getting ready to do, or at least I know what he should be doing. And I want to give you the story here real quick. So it is first serve, he misses it. He still has match point. Now, he's not supposed to win this match, right? So I'm just happy that he is where he is with this opponent. Second serve, he runs the play. I'm thinking, oh gosh, this is not the right time to run the play, but hey, you're implementing. That's all that matters. And this is whatever. This is learning. So it's a kick serve out wide. The ball bounces really high. The guy was a right-handed player, so it's his backhand. Addison serves, volley, and he puts the ball in. The kid can't even touch it, and Addison wins the match. And he's super excited, and he's super pumped. And we're in the car, and we always do the rosebud thorn. And I was like, buddy, what was the rose? He's like, Dad, the rose was I ran the play that we had been working on, and I implemented it at the right time. And you know what he said? I didn't even have to think about it, right?
Yeah.
Saved himself time, energy, and money because he just ran the play, didn't think about it. He'd done it so many times. And here's the next thing he said. He says, Dad, because I knew if I would have gotten into a rally where they hit the ball back and forth, I would have been so nervous that it was match point that my brain would have probably made me lose that point. He says, but because I didn't have to think about it, I ran the play, finished the point, and I won the match. So there you go.
I love that. Well, it goes full circle back to that quote that I said, the wealth of information creates a poverty of attention. You want a wealth of attention on whatever you're playing in, which means you have to simplify the information. Less is more here. And so by being intentional with your learning, by being simple and systematic with the process and the execution, and then creating a system around the implementation, that gives you the space to give attention where you need to give attention. And you're not focused on gathering extra information because you already know what you need to do.
That's right.
So whether
you're not
it's
being a dragon,
tennis,
right? You're not being a dragon. Is that what you're saying? You're not being a dragon?
Yeah, I'm saying don't be a dragon.
I got that right?
You got it right.
Right. Yeah.
You got it right. Put your knowledge in a
perfect.
trebuchet and fling it. No, I'm just kidding.
Stop saying that word to me.
Just a catapult, Adam. It's just the historic terminology for a catapult, man.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Okay, good.
But
perfect.
True, yeah, I mean, full circle. Don't hoard information, because less is more truly in actually taking something from a learning to an execution and implementation phase. And that's why even, we were referencing going to events and buying books and podcasts. This is why I don't listen to podcasts, because I'm already reading. I don't need extra incoming information. I don't listen to webinars. I don't go to other classes. I'm very intentional with the media I consume, and I don't spend a lot of time on media. I'm very intentional with the events and conferences I go to, because I know what I need to do to move things forward. And I only want to spend time learning things that are going to move me forward towards my goals.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, I know that you just moved a lot of people forward in their process and moving them towards their goals. So good job, Jess. Way to go, Coach Jess. Let's all give her a hand. Nice job, Coach Jess. And trebuchet and dragons and all that stuff too. So Jess, just curious, I want to tee you up. We didn't set this up ahead of time. I know people want to coach with you, and I know people will learn a lot from you. What can they go do? Number one, I know you have a big course that you are creating that is that people have asked you to build. So this is going to be really cool. Is there a way they can either get information, or is there a way that they can start to get on your wait list? What can we do there?
Yeah, I would say the easiest thing is to go to my Instagram and shoot me a DM. And you can just use the word waitlist. And that's probably the easiest one, because I am being intentional with my time and working on building this as quickly as possible, but also making sure it's the most effective as possible. Because honestly, I love working one-on-one with people, and I am more than happy. I have space for 2 more clients right now. But at the same time, I don't want to work with 1 million people one-on-one, because I want to be intentional with my time and give people the attention they deserve. And that is why I know at my core, I was built to provide or connect people with the knowledge, tools, and resources they need to live their most impactful life. And to do that at scale, I need to put out different content that isn't just one-on-one coaching with me. So that's what I'm working on.
Perfect. And another shameless plug here, you can also get as much Jess as you want when you join the I Love Coaching community. And every Thursday, Jess is there sharing knowledge, dropping bombs. So hey, come join us.
Creating spreadsheets that are tools.
That's right. Absolutely. All day long. So here you go. Call to action is go to Jess's Instagram, Coach Jess Weber, type in the word trebuchet or dragon, and she will get with you on her upcoming learning process. Jess, great job today. Thank you for all your knowledge.
No, thank you for having me. And don't forget that you can always get all of the I Love Coaching knowledge from our newsletter as well, which is just ilovecoachingco.com, and sign up for that there. So, we want to be intentional with the knowledge that we provide. And so I'm very intentional with that newsletter of only sharing 1 thing per email. So that way you can decide, is this something that's relevant to my time and energy right now? Or is it something I can put away and ignore? And I hope that everybody takes the time to go do something like that and subscribe to a newsletter that we come from intention with.
We do. Yep, a lot. And we pour into it, and then go check out our new blog. So that's all also in the newsletter too. Okay, everybody, thanks for listening, and we will see you next time. See you, bye.